Greetings. You don't know it yet, but I am about to break a cardinal rule in my household, which is to bring up Christmas and all things Christmas in the midst of the month of October. This is not acceptable in my house, but I'm doing it anyway. And here's why. We are not living in usual times, obviously. And many are looking into the holiday season with some trepidation, wondering what sorts of festive activities we will be able to participate in that will be in keeping with the season, enjoyable, fun, joyous, but also safe. And so I am looking into that season, wondering what we can do at Northwood Christian Church for our community to provide a space of Christmas cheer in the midst of these sometimes dark times. So what we're going to do is have a service, a Christmas Eve service in our parking lot. And we're going to decorate our parking lot with Christmas trees, replete with lights. And we are procuring a shortwave radio, a transistor radio, where we'll be broadcasting into the cars of those in our parking lot, where we will be playing Christmas carols for us to sing from our cars safely. And it, I think, will be a wonderful time. We're even going to hold out candles from our car windows to ring in the joyous day that is Christmas. And so what I'm asking from you are donations, not of your money, but of your Christmas trees, fake Christmas trees. Maybe you have one sitting in your attic that you have not used in years. We would love to make use of it, and if you'd like it back, of course, we will return it to you. Also, donations of Christmas lights. We will purchase lights if necessary, but we would like to first start with donations and see what sorts of Christmas lights people in our community have, so that we will be able to be as cost effective as is possible. So, two things really. Christmas trees, fake Christmas trees, and Christmas lights. If you have them, we would like to borrow those for a time, and that would be very generous of you. So if you are interested in making these donations, please contact me. I'm going to have my email here on the screen, and if you are interested, please shoot me an email. I would love to hear from you. And that being said, sorry, Kelly, my wife, for speaking the unspeakable in October, and I'll even say it, Merry Christmas in October. Boy, I shouldn't have done that. I should just move on. Here now is the message. Our scripture reading for today is found in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 22, verses 15 through 22, and it goes. Then the Pharisees went and plotted to entrap him being Jesus, in what he said. So they sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with truth, and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality. Tell us, then, what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin used for the tax. And they brought him a denarius. Then he said to them, Whose head is this, and whose title? They answered, The emperor's. Then he said to them, Therefore give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's. When they heard this, they were amazed. And they left him and went away. I should start by saying something from the onset. I've entitled this message, What Belongs to Caesar? And what I thought that I would be doing in this sermon was I would, in the form of a sermon, basically draw a line down the middle and divide into two columns. And on one column, I would talk about the things that belonged to Caesar, the emperor, to our governments, to our civic institutions, our civic responsibilities. And then I thought in the other column I would talk about the things that don't belong here, the things that belong distinctly to God. And then we would come up with this handy list, and probably the things that belong to God would have become my own pet political issues and things like that. The lines get blurry when you're preaching and trying to decide about these things. And so that's the way that I thought this would go. What should a good citizen and a good Christian do? Both. But with some things, it gets tricky. Does Caesar own my draft card? And should a draft be reinstated? So let me rephrase that. Can the emperor, or anybody tell me to take up weapons and to attempt to kill other people by order of the state? So I'm going to want to put that out of the Caesar category and into some other category. Maybe not even God's. I don't think I want to be doing that for anybody. And I don't think God wants me to be doing that. Of course, I would want to be having discussion about the things that we were talking about in this text, taxes and the like. And this can be a highly contentious discussion. It's almost as if to bring up these things is like setting a trap. Have you ever talked to somebody who is very anti-taxation and wanted to talk to them about taxes? It can be like a trap, which is exactly what is going on in this encounter. A trap sprung for Jesus about a highly contentious issue about what we owe to our governments, our civic institutions, and those who rule over us. So in this story, you have two groups, each uniquely positioned in this Roman-occupied Israel. And if you don't know, Israel is occupied by Rome. Roman soldiers in the streets, making people toe the line. And the Herodians bore the family name of those who were commissioned by the Roman Empire to rule over the people. These are governing officials on behalf of Rome. And they lived in palaces, and they facilitated the collecting of taxes, and they made sure the people stayed in line and paid the bill. They cooperated with Rome and Rome's oppressive ways, and they were paid handsomely for it. The Pharisees we meet in the story were not always cooperative with Rome, I should say that. Sometimes they were advocates for the people, and Pharisees tend to get painted with a broad brush in the Gospel of Matthew, and studying them historically, sometimes we find it's more nuanced than the Pharisees that we meet in this story. But the Pharisees that we meet in this story have found a common enemy with the Herodians in the person of Jesus. Just days earlier, Jesus showed up at their temple and flipped over the tables of the money changers, and said that they were behaving like the temple was a den of thieves, and they turned the temple into a marketplace, a place where you profit monetarily at the expense of the people. Churches don't do that. More on that in a second. So they get together and they lay a trap. And it's a sticky trap as well. They're talking about something as contentious as taxes. Is it lawful to pay the taxes? And this tax question was very unpopular, to put it mildly. This tax paid for the statues erected in Rome's honor. This statue paid for the palaces and the fortresses that Rome was putting up all across the countryside. These taxes paid for the very soldiers who kept the people in line. These tax dollars paid by the people towards the oppression of the people. So they were footing the bill for their own oppression. And so these taxes were, to say they're unpopular, I mean, it's just a scandal. So if Jesus answers no, it's not lawful to pay the taxes, this is insurrection talk. And the penalty for this is death. Read to the end of the Gospels. This is, in fact, what ends up happening to Jesus. But if Jesus answers yes, then the common people are likely to turn on Jesus. And up to this point, Jesus has the common people on his side. He entered into the city just moments before, days earlier, with great fanfare and celebration. They're happy to see him. So if he says yes, you should pay your taxes, he loses the people. If he says no, then he is a traitor. This is the nature of this trap, very insidious. So Jesus, the text reads, is aware of their malice. They mean him no good. They wish him ill. And he says, why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites? And hypocrites today means that you say one thing and then do another thing, or you act in a duplicitous way. But here in the Greek, it just literally means actor. They are not sincere people. They're putting on a kind of staged show. This is the nature of the trap. And so he says, show me the coin used for the tax. And they brought him a denarius. And he said to them, whose head is this and whose title? Now, the emperor's likeness would have been on this coin, along with the emperor's title. Descriptions describing who Rome thought the emperor was. And in Jesus' day, the most common coin would read, Tiberius Caesar, the supreme bridge builder and the high priest of the empire. In other words, the emperor was a conduit to the divine. In fact, was a god, had maintained godlike status, and would be elevated on his death to the pantheon of other gods. Other coins in those days read, Hail, Lord of the earth, invincible, power, glory, honor, blessed, great, worthy art thou to inherit the kingdom. Julius Caesar's coin in his day shows his spirit ascending into the heavens to take his place amongst the gods. Augustus Caesar's coin refers to him as, get this, the Son of God. And so these are words that Jesus that would describe Jesus, and so you can see why he was a controversial figure as far as Rome was concerned. But you could also see the cult of the emperor at play here. The religious system shored up the political power and gave divine sanction for it, a theological justification for it. So this would be the sort of coin that Jesus's antagonists would have presented to Jesus. One carrying the image of the false god Caesar. In fact, it was debated, perhaps, that even possessing such a coin was in violation of the first and the second of the 10 Commandments, which stated, have no other God before God and don't make a graven image. Or in other words, don't create an idol. And on the Roman coin, you have this claim that one, Caesar is God, and then you have this graven image of this false god, Caesar, the emperor. So I think it's a pretty good argument to say that this coin in and of itself is a form of idolatrous symbol. And so that was a contentious thing. And Jesus calls them and says, show me the coin that we use to pay this tax in question. But the religious persons of Jesus' day who profited by Rome in Jesus' day could say, no. True, we might carry these coins in our pockets. We're just being pragmatic. It's what we have to do. We have to buy our bread. We have to earn our keep. This is just the currency, and we don't like the way it looks, but this is just what we have to do. But we would never allow pagan icons into our place of worship, into the temple, the sacred space where the people meet God in a very visceral, hands-on, experiential way. No graven image or false gods to be found there. No idolatrous coin will be used to pay for the sacrifices of the people. And this is why the money changers were at the temple in a few scenes back, where Jesus throws the tables of the money changers over. The people were showing up to exchange their Roman currency for a different currency, with that currency, not the one with the false god image of Caesar on it, with the other currency that they would exchange it for. That's the one that they would use to purchase the animals used for the sacrifice. This is how they would subsidize their worship, pay for their opportunity to worship. And so, no, they might say, the religious leaders of Jesus' day, no, we don't allow these Roman coins into our temple, into the holy place. But I learned something in pursuit of answering this question about whether or not they would have brought an idolatrous coin into the temple. And it turns out that the coin exchanged for the denarii was the Tyrian shekel. It's named that because it was minted in a place called Tyre. And it bore on it, get this, the Phoenician god Baal, wearing a laurel from the Olympic Games. In other words, the money bearing the image of one false god was exchanged for a coin with another false god's image. So what gives? Well, it turns out that the Roman denarii was about 80% silver, whilst the coin minted in Tyre was 95% silver. So the god at question here is not Caesar or the Phoenician god Baal. The real god at play, humming in the background, is the very silver that the images are printed on. The god is been called many things through the centuries. Mammon, filthy lucre, to use some archaic phrases, money. In short, greed. This is the God that is humming in the background. And so Jesus says, whose image is on the coin? It's a trick question. True, the answer is technically the Caesar, the emperor. But whose image is he made in? And the questioners are forgetting that human beings like Caesar are made in the image of God. In fact, there is nothing created below or above the heavens that does not in one way bear God's signature. There is, in fact, nothing that belongs to Caesar, it turns out. All belongs to and is for the glory of God. The silver and the face on the coin. The God who is glorified because God is love and that God calls us towards a greater love. So give to Caesar what Caesar thinks he owns. In the end, it's all God's. And once you get this concept, then you think of everything that you hold in your hands very differently. The people in Jesus' day were completely stumped. Remember, before I thought I was going to make my list of things that belonged to Caesar in one column and then God on the God column. And it turns out that even Caesar belongs in the God column. He has only deceived himself to think that he is a God in his own right instead of a person who is made in the image of the God who is God. He thought that the coins that bore his image were his, when in fact they were comprised of ores and metals that were created by God and only had superficial value because humans think in strange ways. Caesar is but a caretaker of that material for a time, and it never was worth very much in the first place. This false god is created by way of a delusion. The delusion is the silver can be possessed. The delusion is that we can possess it at all, or that we really ever possess the objects that we gain in exchange for our currency. We obtain nothing that is truly ours. It's all transitory. And we learn this when we die. Nothing is gained under the sun. Or as Jesus put it elsewhere, put your treasure in more than this, for moth and rust destroy it all in the end. Instead, invest in what lasts. What does last? More on that in a second. So give to Caesar what you or I can never really possess. It's all very silly. Some scrap of the created order that we have decided to give a numerical value to. In the end, it's never ours anyway. We deceived ourselves when we thought that the coin and the symbols on them were the whole point of living. The point is what good things you do with what you've got. Sometimes silver, sometimes other things. The point is to be rich in the way that matters. So take your denarii, your dollar, your euro, or whatever passes for currency where you live, and buy some food to feed those that you love. Or if those that you love have all that they need, give it to the poor. You cannot keep it. It will rot in the grain bins if you leave it there. Bless others with what you have, with all that you are. You who are made in God's likeness. Bless others who are made in God's likeness. So what belongs to God? At this point, you should know all of it. It is all a gift given us by God. And that only means anything to us so long as we remember that we are given these things to multiply the love of God. You remember those parables about those servants who would be given certain numbers of coins, and then the master of the house would leave and come back, and the ones that multiplied what they had been given were those who were found to have used those resources well. Well, the coins are stand-ins for love and acts of charity and good deeds and good works. And the point is, take what you've been given and multiply it. You've been blessed by God, and you are to multiply God's creative matter, energy, and love, and all that you have been entrusted with for a time. and turn that into more for the sake of others. So, again, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. It doesn't really matter. We spend so much time fixated on this question of what belongs to Caesar's when it all belongs to God, and Caesar thinks it's so very important, and we'll discover in the end it does not matter. So I guess I'll pay my taxes. Good. I'll pay them. I'll let the Caesars of our day keep what they think they own, and they don't. The important thing is, don't you dare start to think like them. Don't you dare start to think like them. Fortunately, our minds have been shaped to think like them, thinking that we can ever really possess any part of God's creation or its creatures for keeps. In the meantime, follow the two greatest commandments. This is currency you keep. Love God and love others. Love is the currency that we keep. In Jesus' day, these were time-worn principles within Judaism, and they're time-worn and timeless because they are eternal, foundational principles. And these principles signify an exchange between our own currencies and the only currency that really matters in the end. How you love God and others will be revealed by how well we utilize the small pieces of the created order entrusted to us. So the money and the possessions and our talents and our time and our energies only matter as we exchange them for love and use them to cultivate more love and more life. Because the love and the life cultivated there is what we keep. So how will we use our time? How will we use our material goods? How will we use our intellect and our creative abilities? We should use all that we have to love God and all persons who bear God's image, which means everyone. Everyone is your neighbor is the answer. In other words, be a blessing to every person you have ever met, and use what you have to be a blessing to every person you have ever met. Give to God what is God's. Share all that you have with others in the name of love. We, along with Caesar, have deceived ourselves for far too long in thinking that it was ever ours to begin with. The titles, the deeds, the time spent. Let us instead give to God and others our energy and our lives. These gifts that have been given to us, let us pay it forward. Here is an investment that lasts. Here is buying into a currency that lasts. Loving as we too have been loved. That is, in the end, all that matters.